Imagine, if you will, sitting down to your morning coffee, turning on your home computer to read the day's newspaper. Well, it's not as far-fetched as it may seem. In fact, both local San Francisco papers are investing a lot of money to try and get a service just like that started. Science editor Steve Newman reports on one person already using the brand new system.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Isaac, or One Piece Opinion, and I welcome you to the channel. Recently, I had a discussion with some of my friends where we ranked each of the One Piece arcs in order. Today, I and a few special guests will be going over the arcs in the East Blue Saga in order of how we ranked them in our group discussion. The way we ranked each arc was by assigning them each a number score from 1 to 32, where 1 is the greatest and 32 is the worst. The lower score, the better. There were 7 of us present in the discussion, so the worst score an arc could possibly get is 224. Through quite simple math, I was able to convert the scores for each arc into a percent grade out of 100. With that out of the way, let us begin our discussion with number 6, with a grade of 11%, Syrup Village. Syrup Village is without a doubt one of Oda's weakest arcs in all of One Piece. With a weak plot driven by a mediocre villain and backed by a cast of rather annoying characters, Syrup Village finds itself at the bottom of this list. Usopp is, for lack of a better term, annoying, but it's sort of understandable. Abandoned by his father, who set out to sea with Shanks when Usopp was young, as well as the loss of his mother shortly after, Usopp began lying to himself to give himself hope. Every day, as he ran the streets screaming that there were pirates on the island, he was secretly hoping that his lies were true, and that his father, Yasopp, had returned. It's annoying, yes, but a little endearing once you get past it. Now Kuro, on the other hand, is a fraud. There's no way in hell that he is the second smartest man in the East Blue. His plan to steal Kai's fortune is, again for lack of a better term, batshit stupid. If he really wanted to wipe his name as a pirate and start anew, he could simply raid Kai's village, steal the fortune as well as the villagers' money, and then fake his death. It isn't far-fetched to assume that his look-alike crewmate would still be present on his crew, so he could still enact that plan. Now for plot reasons, that wouldn't work, yes, but it's still a pretty dipshit plan. Moving along to number 5, we find ourselves at Orangetown, with a grade of 20%. Orangetown is one of my least favorite arcs, so I won't talk much about it. However, the arc itself isn't entirely useless in the story, not by any means in fact. Before writing the script and analyzing deeper, I believe that if Orangetown was just cut from the story, that nothing of value would be missing. But this simply isn't the case. While I do not like Orangetown, I do have to admit that it sets up a few principles of the One Piece world that are important later on, or expanded upon later. Buggy introduces us to the idea that there are more devil fruits than the Gomu Gomu no Mi, as well as the history that Shanks and Buggy have. We got an early glimpse into the Pirate King's crew and also the backstory behind Buggy getting his devil fruit powers. Overall, Orangetown is a pretty terrible arc, but it still deserves a place in the story. Moving on with a more positive note, we find ourselves at number 4, Romance Dawn, with 25%. Now don't get offended by this score. When we discussed this arc, most of us had only positive things to say about it. There are just so many more arcs that are without a doubt better than this one that we had no choice but to place it so low. Romance Dawn, in my opinion, is a great beginning to an even greater story. It perfectly set up the driving factor for a main rubberman Luffy, as well as an end goal, the Pirate King. Luffy is masterfully characterized through his interactions and dialogue with Shanks, his idol and mentor as a child. Shanks and his crew, Ben Beckman, Lucky Roo, and Yasopp being the most notable, give us and Luffy an early glimpse into what having a fully established crew would be like. Shanks' reaction to Luffy being beaten by Hyuga showed Luffy how important it is to protect the ones you care for, and that your life is not something to gamble with or take lightly on the high seas. Finally, Shanks' sacrifice for Luffy and giving up his arms as well as the passing down of the Straw Hat motivates not only Luffy with a debt but also the reader with a secondary end goal, to meet back up with Shanks and return the Straw Hat. Overall, Romance Dawn is a pretty good beginning to the series, as it sets up our main character, his motivation, and the end goal of the series. Oh yeah, and we can't forget about Kobe and Zoro. Zoro is the first character that really drew me into One Piece, as he better caught my attention than Luffy did. from the first arc in the East Blue to the last, we find ourselves at Logtown, sitting at number 3 with a grade of 29%. Logtown has always sat with me as one of the more special arcs in early One Piece. It's short and straight to the point. It introduces us to Captain Smoker, the sword grades, as well as the final destination of the former Pirate King being the Executioner's Podium of Logtown. And those are only a few examples. Logtown is the epilogue to the East Blue Saga, and while it didn't score very high on our rankings, it does not mean it doesn't have charm and excitement throughout such a short arc. And with the arc being so short, I think it is appropriate that I don't speak long on it and get into our number 2 spot with Baratier, with a score of 44%.
Baratier was the first arc in One Piece where viewers got a snippet of the horrors to be expected from the Grand Line. Now, the Great Pirate Era was introduced as a time of unmatched excitement for exploration and general piratry, but it was only until Baratier that we understood just how challenging the goal of getting the One Piece really is. Even before Don Krieg inched back out of the Grand Line, barely holding on to his life, the scenes between Zeph and Sanji are enough to highlight just how desperate one can get out at sea. The world of One Piece is not to be taken lightly, and the difference between life and death can often be determined by something as taken for granted as how much food one has access to. Without the best chef, there is no Pirate King. The vastness of the Grand Line is only lengthened after the unexpectedly swift introduction of Mihawk. This was the perfect way to solidify Zoro's character as Luffy's right hand. There isn't really a greater motivation to becoming the world's greatest swordsman than losing your swords to the current title holder. Without rambling on for too long, Baratier is a fine arc that demonstrates the conviction of true pirates, both allies and enemies. Battles are fought for principle's sake, and pride is set aside for the pursuit of romance.
Finally, we find ourselves at number 1, Arlong Park with a score of 68%.
So here we are. Now we are entering the most emotional arc at this point in the story. And based on my experience, this is the arc that I've heard come up the most when fans talk about their first true emotional attachment to One Piece and what got them invested for what was to come in the future of the story. Arlong Park was the first major step that we got to see with Oda improving as a storyteller with the subtle build-up that occurred leading up to this arc. This was our first experience as fans for us to witness how Oda could set up long-term planning in his story. It was also the final test for Luffy and his newly acquired group of friends to pass and come together as a real crew before setting sail for the Grand Line. The biggest theme of One Piece, that being centered around freedom, shines the most in this part of the story's prologue. Here we have the literal oppression of an entire island and the villages that inhabit it. On top of that, this arc's main villain, that being Arlong, whose ideals lie in oppressing those who he views beneath him, and the idea that everyone in life has a designated role assigned to them, is honestly a great contrast to our MC Luffy, who embodies everything that has to do with the idea of freedom. We also get more early signs in the story of how corrupt those in power in the One Piece world can be, showing early on that not everything is in black and white between those who are good and bad in the story, meaning that not every Marine is looking to help those who are suffering, and not every pirate is looking to cause suffering. This was also the first major step for Luffy's path to becoming a great pirate, as he received his first ever bounty by defeating the man who at the time was regarded as the biggest threat in the East Blue. But the real highlights of this arc are focused on the character of Nami, and giving us some real insight into understanding the kind of person who she really is. Leading up to this arc, one of the things that we knew the most about Nami, at this point in the story at least, was that she was not only a person who robbed pirates, but we also discover in this arc the reason for her deep hatred of pirates. And not only that, but also her reason for being infatuated with money, one of the main traits with her character. And all of this occurring in one of the most emotional backstories to this day, leading up to one of the best moments in One Piece and one of the best Nami moments, with her entire 8 years of hard work gathering money that have resulted in nothing changing for her or her village. Her back against the wall, with those who she loves now marching to their deaths, seeking revenge for her, now finds herself in her weakest moment and finally asks Luffy, a pirate who she come to know and trust, for help, which ends up resulting in one of the more satisfying defeats of an antagonist in the story. I could go on all day about this arc, but basically what I'm trying to say is that Arlong Park is the peak of the East Blue saga, and is an early iteration of many arcs to follow, and the selling point on why One Piece is worth getting into.
And that brings us to the end of the video. If you like this content and would like to see more, please consider subscribing. We do plan on having more of these ranking discussions soon, so if you would like to see part 2 of this, make sure to like the video and ring that bell. Stay healthy, stay happy, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.